Mara Thompson seemed like the perfect young professional, admired by friends and trusted by everyone around her. But the secret she buried so carefully would soon unravel, exposing a life far darker than anyone could imagine. Mara Thompson's life appeared flawless to anyone who looked at her from the outside. She lived in a stylish apartment in a bustling city, where the streets hummed with life and opportunity. Her mornings began predictably, with a quiet routine of coffee, news, and the soft hum of the city outside her window. She dressed neatly for her job at a corporate firm, where her colleagues admired her reliability and calm demeanor. Mara's smile was warm but controlled, an expression that made people trust her instantly. To the world, she was organized, disciplined, and composed, a young woman who seemed to have mastered the balance between ambition and normalcy. Friends described her as intelligent, approachable, and dependable, and few had ever questioned her motives or her past. She had built this life carefully, brick by brick, with the precision of someone who knew the value of appearances. Every decision she made, every interaction, was calculated to maintain the image she wanted others to see. She had learned early that perception could shield her from scrutiny, and she had become exceptionally skilled at controlling it. Yet behind Mara's confident exterior was a past she had buried so deeply that even she sometimes struggled to remember all the details. There were memories she refused to confront, events she had erased from her daily thoughts, and people she had deliberately left behind. These fragments of her former life were like shadows at the edges of her mind, faint, distant, and largely ignored. But the shadows were real, and they carried the potential to surface at any moment. Mara had always known this, which was why she had taken extraordinary measures to maintain her carefully constructed present. Each relocation, each choice of employment, even her friendships, were influenced by her desire to avoid exposure. She had created layers of distance, protective routines, and plausible explanations to ensure no one could connect the dots to her hidden past. Despite the careful planning, Mara never felt entirely safe. The knowledge that her secret existed, fully intact beneath the surface of her ordinary life, was both empowering and terrifying. It gave her control over her environment and the people around her, but it also created a constant undercurrent of anxiety. She could never let her guard down, never allow herself to be fully open, because even the smallest slip could unravel everything. She walked through the city streets with that awareness, every glance and gesture measured, every word chosen carefully. The perfection she projected was not merely vanity. It was a shield, one she had learned to wield with remarkable skill. In the beginning, Mara believed her past could remain hidden indefinitely. The steps she had taken seemed sufficient. The lives she had touched had no reason to dig deeper, and the digital and physical traces of her earlier years had been carefully scrubbed. But the more ordinary and controlled her current life appeared, the more fragile it actually was. All it took was a small, unnoticed error or an unexpected question to ignite a chain of events that could expose the truth. Mara had always assumed she could manage any situation, that she could control her world as she always had. She did not yet realize that the secret she thought no one could ever discover had already begun to stir, quietly but inexorably, ready to shatter the life she had so painstakingly built. The investigation into Mara Thompson's life began quietly, almost imperceptibly. It started with small inconsistencies, things that most people would dismiss as clerical errors or minor lapses. A document that didn't match the official records, a forgotten address, a gap in her employment history. Each detail was insignificant on its own. Yet, for detectives trained to notice patterns, these small anomalies were signals that something deeper lay beneath the surface. As they started to piece together her history, they began to realize that Mara's life was far more complex than anyone had imagined. Mara had been meticulous in creating her present reality. Every move she had made, every relationship she had entered, and every job she had taken was carefully calculated to maintain the impression of normalcy. Her past had been edited to the point of near invisibility. Old friends had been lost, locations changed, and records altered or erased. Detectives found traces of her early life scattered across multiple cities and states, but the fragments were incomplete, leaving gaps that suggested deliberate concealment. It was clear that Mara had understood the value of disappearing in plain sight, and she had mastered it. Digital footprints provided another layer of evidence. Although her social media profiles and email accounts appeared ordinary, forensic analysis revealed a pattern of selective deletion and careful manipulation. Files were erased in ways that suggested long-term planning. Even seemingly mundane data, like timestamps and metadata, contained subtle clues. Investigators discovered periods where her digital presence had completely vanished, only to reappear later under carefully controlled circumstances. These gaps aligned with moves to new cities, changes in employment, and transitions in her personal life, reinforcing the idea that Mara had been building a shield around herself, one move at a time. Financial records told a similar story. Her accounts were carefully managed, with funds shifting in ways that appeared ordinary at first glance but suggested planning when examined more closely. Some transactions pointed to temporary accommodations, others to small, unexplained expenditures. Nothing large enough to trigger alarms, yet the pattern indicated deliberate oversight of her own movements and resources. Even the most mundane details, like grocery purchases and utility bills, reflected the structure of someone living a highly controlled life. Detectives also began interviewing people from Mara's past. Former neighbors, co-workers, and acquaintances provided glimpses of a woman who was always polite, always composed, yet always just out of reach. People remembered details that initially seemed insignificant: the way she avoided social gatherings, the precision with which she organized her schedule, the rare occasions when she mentioned locations or people from her past. Taken together, these recollections formed a picture of someone acutely aware of the need to manage appearances, someone who had invested years in creating a carefully maintained persona. As investigators connected the dots, it became clear that Mara's past was not gone. It was carefully hidden, waiting for the smallest misstep to reveal itself. The secret she had protected so fiercely was leaving faint traces, subtle signals that could be interpreted by those trained to see them. What had begun as a simple review of records evolved into a full-scale investigation, revealing that her life, seemingly ordinary on the surface, had been constructed with extraordinary care to keep the truth buried. The realization weighed heavily on detectives. The perfection Mara projected was not natural, and the secret she thought no one would ever discover was quietly leaving a trail, ready to be uncovered. The breakthrough came when investigators stumbled upon a photograph tucked away in an archive of old records. At first glance, it seemed innocuous, a casual snapshot of Mara at a party years earlier, surrounded by friends she had never mentioned. But the photograph carried hidden significance. It contradicted the story she had presented to her colleagues, friends, and neighbors. Mara was in a city she had never claimed to visit, interacting with people whose existence she had carefully erased from her life. The image became the key that unlocked a trail of evidence that had been carefully obscured for years. Detectives began reconstructing Mara's life before she became the polished professional everyone knew. They traced her movements, piece by piece, uncovering addresses she had left off official forms, short-term jobs that left no digital trace, and acquaintances whose connections she had never acknowledged. Each discovery revealed a strategy of concealment that went beyond simple privacy. It was a carefully orchestrated system designed to erase her past while maintaining an unassailable present. What had once appeared as ordinary behavior now looked like a blueprint for deception. Interviews with former classmates and neighbors added depth to the emerging story. They remembered Mara as polite, intelligent, and composed, but also distant in ways that had seemed inconsequential at the time. She rarely shared personal information and often changed the subject when pressed about her past. Minor inconsistencies in her stories had gone unnoticed for years, dismissed as forgetfulness or discretion. Now, viewed through the lens of investigation, those inconsistencies revealed patterns that suggested deliberate misdirection. Every omission, every subtle shift in her narrative, had been intended to protect the secret she had carried for so long. Digital evidence further corroborated the findings. Old email accounts, cloud backups, and online records revealed periods of activity, followed by sudden, unexplained gaps. Files were deleted, replaced, or altered with technical precision. Metadata indicated that Mara had moved through multiple locations in a short span of time, each change carefully aligned to obscure connections between her past and present. it became clear that she had mastered the art of living invisibly, ensuring that her true history would remain hidden unless someone pieced together the fragments with meticulous care. The photograph also led investigators to people Mara had deliberately avoided. They discovered acquaintances who had tried to contact her over the years but were ignored or misled. These individuals provided information about her behavior, her interactions, and the calculated nature of her concealment. It became evident that Mara had relied on the assumption that no one would look closely enough to uncover the pattern. Her strategy had worked for years because she had combined social skill, technical knowledge, and careful planning to create a seamless life built on trust and invisibility. As detectives reconstructed her history, the picture that emerged was both impressive and chilling. Mara was intelligent, deliberate, and methodical, capable of living a double life without raising suspicion. The photograph, a seemingly simple artifact, revealed that the secret she had thought would never be discovered was, in fact, leaving subtle traces. These traces, once connected, exposed the reality of a life carefully curated and a past that could no longer remain buried. Mara's ordinary exterior was shattered, replaced by a story of meticulous planning, deliberate omission, and a secret that had quietly begun to unravel as the investigation progressed. The meticulousness of Mara Thompson's life became increasingly apparent. What had initially seemed like small inconsistencies now revealed a sophisticated pattern of concealment, one that extended far beyond what detectives had imagined. Every apartment she had lived in, every job she had held, and even the friends she had chosen were part of a carefully constructed narrative designed to hide her past. Nothing in her daily life had been left to chance. Her routines, once seen as normal and even admirable, were now viewed as tools for maintaining control and avoiding exposure. Mara's ability to appear ordinary while orchestrating her own invisibility was becoming the most chilling aspect of the case. Digital evidence had become the backbone of the investigation. Computers, phones, and online accounts revealed an intricate system of deletion, backup, and manipulation. Files were systematically removed or hidden, and data that could reveal her movements or relationships had been encrypted or erased. Investigators found periods of complete digital silence, lasting weeks or even months, each corresponding with relocations or life changes. Even innocuous online activity, such as shopping receipts or social media interactions, had been carefully curated to leave no trace of her true history. The detective team recognized that Mara's technical sophistication was as much a part of her secret as the events she had worked so hard to hide. Her personal relationships also reflected a deliberate strategy. Interviews with former colleagues, neighbors, and casual acquaintances revealed a consistent pattern. Mara kept people close enough to maintain appearances, but distant enough to prevent them from learning too much. She shared selective personal details while avoiding topics that could reveal her past. She was charming, approachable, and trustworthy, yet always carefully monitored the boundaries of disclosure. This combination of likability and control had allowed her to move through multiple social environments without raising suspicion, creating a sense of normalcy that obscured the complexity of her real life. The investigation uncovered how even minor mistakes could disrupt such careful planning. In Mara's case, it was an overlooked digital timestamp, a fragment of a forgotten email, and an unintentional witness that began to unravel the story she had built. These small errors allowed detectives to trace her movements, reconstruct her past, and piece together the events she had worked so hard to erase. The pressure of living under constant self-monitoring had eventually created vulnerabilities, proving that even the most meticulous plans are susceptible to collapse. As the evidence mounted, Mara's constructed life began to appear less like stability and more like a fragile facade. The apartment that once seemed calm and orderly now resembled a stage, with every item placed deliberately to maintain appearances. The routines she had followed for years were revealed as rituals of control, intended to manage perception rather than convenience. Investigators realized that Mara's secret was not a single act or isolated event, but a long-term strategy that had allowed her to exist undetected in plain sight. By the end of this phase, it became clear that the danger did not lie in chaos or violence, but in calculation. Mara's life had been a masterclass in concealment, and yet, despite her intelligence and planning, the cracks had begun to show. The facade of normalcy was collapsing, and the truth she had believed would never be discovered was now steadily coming to light. Every detail, once considered ordinary, now served as a reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that even the most carefully hidden secrets have a way of emerging. By this stage, detectives had pieced together a timeline, connecting her movements, relationships, and careful manipulations into a coherent story. What once seemed like a normal, ordinary life was now understood as a series of deliberate choices designed to obscure a reality no one had suspected. Every relocation, every minor alteration to records, and every selective interaction with others had been part of a long-term strategy to protect herself. The extent of her planning left investigators both impressed and unsettled. Mara had managed to maintain the illusion of normalcy for years, convincing everyone around her that she was simply a composed, dependable young woman. But the truth was far more disturbing than anyone could have anticipated. When the investigation reached its conclusion, the consequences of Mara's hidden life became clear. The people she had trusted, friends, colleagues, neighbors, were stunned to learn that the person they thought they knew had been living a dual existence. Small inconsistencies they had once dismissed now appeared as pieces of a carefully constructed puzzle. Investigators explained how her strategies of concealment had allowed her to move undetected, manipulate perceptions, and erase the traces of her past. Each revelation seemed more shocking than the last, as the full picture emerged from the shadows of her meticulously curated life. The ripple effects extended beyond her immediate circle. Authorities realized that her case exposed weaknesses in social, legal, and digital systems that had failed to detect her deception sooner. Records had been fragmented across cities and states, and no one agency had the full story. Her story became a cautionary tale about the limits of trust and the ease with which appearances can mislead. Investigators stressed that Mara's intelligence and careful planning had made her nearly invisible, highlighting the dangers of assuming that ordinary behavior always reflects ordinary motives. Psychologists and criminologists reviewing the case described Mara's behavior as highly calculated. She had relied on self-discipline, observation, and strategic planning to maintain her secret. Her charm and social skills ensured she remained likable and approachable, while her calculated omissions and avoidance of deep personal connections kept her past safely hidden. It was not random luck that allowed her to remain undetected. It was the product of careful study, foresight, and a constant awareness of how others perceived her. Every action had been deliberate, every choice a step in a long-term plan to protect herself from exposure. In the end, the revelation of her secret served as both closure and a warning. The carefully maintained life Mara had built could not withstand scrutiny forever. The exposure of her past shattered the illusion of normalcy, forcing everyone to confront the uncomfortable truth that appearances are not always what they seem. Her story became a stark reminder that even the most meticulous plans are vulnerable to unforeseen events, and that the secrets people believe are buried forever can, and often do, resurface. Mara Thompson's life, once admired for its stability and composure, now stood as a chilling testament to the power of deception, the fragility of trust, and the inevitability of truth.